everyone, and welcome to the first episode on the Career Talk series. On this episode, we have with us second generation architect Mr. Indrajit Kembhavi, along with his wife Mrs. Nita Kembhavi, both partners and co-principal architects at the Kembhavi Architect Foundation. I, Ananya, along with my co-hosts Manaswini, Siddhant and Avnish, will interact with our guests as we get to know more about their personal experiences in the profession, the career opportunities, and queries we have in general when it comes to architecture as a career. Before we proceed further, I request my co-host Manaswini to introduce our guests for the day.
Thank you, Ananya. After completion of their B Arc, Mr. Indrajit Kembhavi and Ms. Nita Kembhavi went on to pursue postgraduate studies in the esteemed JJ College of Architecture, Mumbai. After a short stint with architect Gerard Kuna, where he could work on the book Houses of Goa, Mr. Indrajit Kembhavi went on to join the Kembhavi Architect Foundation. Ms. Nita, on the other hand, her attention to detail is something she's often been praised about. Apart from architecture, she's also interested in art, and she's working on an upcoming exhibition titled Man, City and Nature in the Indian Context. Mr. Indrajit Kembhavi and Ms. Nita Kembhavi together head out the Bachelor operations in the Kembhavi Architect Foundation.
Thank you, Manaswini. We are thrilled to host such remarkable guests. Without further ado, I request Avnish to initiate the interaction.
Sure, Ananya. So I'd like to start the interaction by asking, how was your journey as an architect been so far, and what was your main reason for choosing this profession over other professions?
Architecture, they say, is the mother of all arts.
Yeah.
And also on the other side, there is a lot of science which is involved to it. So this is probably the art where science and art, are complementing each other in a very fine balance.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we are also dictated by professions like economics, psychology, culture, history, literature. Everything comes into this profession. And looking at the various facets that we're working on, I feel that probably no profession on the planet is as comprehensive as architecture, where I feel it's not just the right head or the left head which is known, but all parts of the brain come together to function to create something which is a sustainable living experience.
Yes, exactly.
At what point in life did you feel that architecture was for you? What decisions did you take to ensure that you got there?
See, as far as I'm concerned, art was always a part of my life. So I was an artist as a little girl, and slowly I got to know about architecture in my 12th, and that's when I saw a lot of women who I knew were architects. So that again influenced me, and I saw that art is definitely a large part in architecture. So that way it helped me, transition from art to architecture, and that's how I, took this particular career option.
Thank you.
Yeah, with regard to that, was the journey ever challenging? Did you have second thoughts while choosing architecture as a career?
Not at all. Somehow I enjoyed my those 5 years of architecture. I thoroughly enjoyed. It involved a lot of hard work, but the kind of subjects you actually work on are not something which you have done till your 12th. I mean, till the 12th. There's a lot of you work on the sheets. There's graphics. There are interesting subjects which you work on. There's carpentry, a part of our syllabus, and sketching and art and all that. So the course was interesting, and I enjoyed every bit of it. It's because, as he just mentioned, architecture is the mother of all arts. Architecture is a form of art which you're creating. It's on a larger scale. The canvas is huge. So I feel I never repented taking this as a my career.
Thank you.
Right, that's really nice. And now a little more personal question. What can be the fondest memory you have about your college life?
Fondest memories, okay. All the fun we had, frankly, where we got in trouble. And I think our design sessions used to be interesting. So we used to all work on our designs, get it, and it was put on in the right in the middle of the class, and we all analyzed it. That was interesting too. So, and the various trips we had, that was another beautiful part of the whole course, where we actually went and studied historical monuments. We got to sketch them. So I think that's another side to it which you will love.
Like she said, architecture colleges are very, very informal. and they start in the morning but they don't end at all. So it's like so we are working all the time, and it's like it's very interactive, because architecture is not a lone man's task or a lone person task. It's something where a whole team is involved. So even in the college, we, like you said, we all were involved in it thoroughly. And these introspective sessions during design, case studies, travel, study of history made it, like very involving, where every member was very deeply involved. And I think it gave us some of the fondest memories of our life ever.
Right, that's really nice.
So you've been in this space for quite a while, and you've taken up quite niche projects. Which among these will always remain close to your heart, and why?
Every project that we do, it's like, for us, it's like every project is like a new baby almost. So it's like we get attached to each and every project that we work on. Of course, there are certain times, like certain, like different children, some become stronger, some are weaker. So you start looking at your weaker projects with lot of love, and with better projects with lot of admiration. So it's like, I feel that every project can be a great challenge, and we enjoy working on them. So it's very hard to typify a particular project. And obviously every project is a learning experience, so we take off from where we left, and we try to do better in the next one which is coming around. Want to add to it?
No, I think that's good.
So if not for architecture, what else would you have pursued for your career, like if architecture wasn't there?
Frankly, I've done architecture so long, I don't even remember what else I would have. I would have been an artist, I think. Which, pure artist then.
Okay, in that case, how did your passion for art help you in architecture as a profession?
See, when you mentioned, in fact you asked which are your favorite projects. Okay, there are certain projects where you can let go, the creative juices actually flow. And there are a couple of projects in the last few years which we have designed, where I felt when I was simultaneously working on some art, and I felt actually that design concept started reflecting in my artwork as well. Like for example, we did a project for Mata Amritanandamayi, and the concept which we floated was about Samudra Manthan. When we worked, and the whole office worked day and night, for the whole month, and we spoke so much about the concept that when I went back home, I actually did a series on Samudra Manthan. So I have the whole concept, the way I visualized it, it's I work with oil, so I have a series on that. So I feel and then there are some projects where I even have mentioned earlier, there are circles maybe in the, in the formation of your plans. And that has reflected in my circle series, which I have another series. So I feel there's a lot of connection between what I do as in my profession to my passion.
Great.
Now this is more of a general question. Considering the new work from home culture, was there ever a need to change your architectural designs in residential spaces? If yes, how did this impact your architectural designs?
See, essentially a lot of changes did come in. The first major change was we understood hygiene. I think for a country like India, we were a little bit, retrograde in terms of knowing hygiene compared to the West or East or wherever it is, being a developing country. So first thing is, things started getting hygienic, and technology started playing a role. Like you started having, touchless wash basins, touchless urinals, and so where you reduce the points of touch. So this was one of the things we started moving to. The second thing we started moving to is the requirement of space. Like we see particularly in homes that we do now, that there is always a need for an additional room, because you need a room where people can actually work through the day, have their meetings on, video meetings and video calls, etc., without getting disturbed. So these are some of the minor changes which started out in terms of the pandemic.
And people are wanting larger homes now. Someone who was okay with a 2-bedroom wants a 3-bedroom. People are looking at, elaborating their spaces, larger homes, more comfort. Because I think after living indoors for 2 years, they felt the need that they have to do up their house and make it as comfortable as possible. So that also is another outcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so while talking about architecture as a career, what basic skills and talents do you think one should have to pursue architecture?
See, it is always said, but I feel to some extent it is true. If you're good, sketching goes a long way. Art, yes, but everyone need not be an artist to be an architect. But sketching, creativity, visualization, communication skills. So these are the things which you need. When you're communicating with a client, it's not only through a drawing, but through what you convey to a client. and of course sketching, because that helps you, put your thoughts on paper. And yeah.
Obviously, like we said, it's the mother of all sciences and arts. So we need to have a mind, I feel, which is a balanced, practical mind as well as a creative mind. So you have to have a configuration of both. The third thing that you would always require, obviously, is a lot of patience, because it takes a lot of time, lot of dedication. So it is very critical that you have passion for the subject before you go into it. It's like sports, unless you are ready to sacrifice a lot, you really can never succeed. So in this also you have to sacrifice a lot of personal life, a lot of fun, and you have to spend a lot of time on the profession. So but the beauty of it is the profession itself is so interesting that you don't miss out on a lot of things.
Because you actually get to see your creation, It doesn't happen every day that you create something and you actually see it standing in front of you. So that, I think, keeps us going.
My question is, what is the course that one needs to pursue to become an architect? Like, how useful can it be for post-graduation as well?
I think to enter into architecture, you have to go through a science stream.
Yeah.
Essentially, what's the logic and reason is something that we do not know. But of course, you need to have a foundation of science, arts, and everything to get into it. And to follow post-graduation, it's like, you learn architecture, then there are a lot of postgraduate disciplines. Like you can go on to management on one side, which is construction or design management. You can go into something specialized subspaces like interior design, landscape, or you can go into furniture design. And you can, if you like large scale, you can go into city planning, urban planning, town planning. So there are a lot of different courses which a person can go into. Today, like a lot of softwares have come in where you can go into visualizing itself, like Rhino and what all
parametric architecture.
Parametric architecture.
Yeah.
So things like that. Yes.
Okay. What should one be looking out for the right institution? And as we were talking out before, are there any competitive exams which we have to attempt to qualify for top colleges?
See, there is NATA, so the aptitude test for architecture. So that is a must. Of course, then you have your regular other courses, but then these days you have colleges also which have an entrance exam. So basically, you have to collect that information as to which and what exams to give in to get into the college.
Okay, so when we're talking about architecture as a career, do you think a bachelor's would suffice, or would you need a post-graduation to be one step ahead of others in the career?
See, it again depends. Definitely working in an office, you finish your bachelor's and then you have internship. Usually it's either 6 months or 1 year, which is a part of your program. But then doing bachelor's also should be okay, because what you actually learn on the field, in a firm, or hands-on experience is what counts the most. But again, it depends what you want to do. You want to go ahead and specialize in something, then definitely you have to do your post-graduation. But I think in architecture it holds good to do either.
On regarding to the previous question, I would ask, is there any specialization on any certain course during post-graduation that you need to become a successful architect?
What do you mean by a successful architect? You'll be amazed that when we talk about architecture, we're not only talking about architects for just practicing architecture. There are people who do a bachelor's and then they specialize in construction. Then they get into construction management. Or they get into urban design and they'll be teaching in a college. So it can lead you anywhere. And beautifully, sometimes this profession is such that, or this subject, that it becomes a platform where you jump onto something else maybe. You could even do photography, you could do, get into a different kind of software.
Journalism, architectural journalism, for example. So what happens is, end of the day, like you can look at your passion within the profession. And I think earlier days we could not afford those things because things were more compartmentalized. But with things opening out today, you can always look at a component of the profession and take it forward. You love to be in the core profession, yes, it's always there.
And like other professions also, these days things are very fluid. So you will be able to maybe have architecture with economics maybe, and management and architecture. So that's the way forward, and that's where we are heading actually.
Seeing how vast architecture is, when a student graduates or post-graduates, what are the different sectors they can work in as an architect?
Sectors
as in, like you were saying, urban management.
Say urban design. where you design cityscapes or components of a city, realign the roads, do things. Town planning, design of new cities. Landscape architecture, which is like specifically designing the gardens, public spaces, private gardens, etc. Interior design, looking at the interior of a house. Then, as we said, visualization, 3D
Then you
visualization.
have product design. That could be even designing a table or a pen maybe. So it can get to that minute to larger of like a urban scale.
Yeah.
So it can vary. It's all about design.
That sounds fun.
Considering how architecture and interior design is always confused to be the same profession, how do the qualifications and career path vary?
The good news is architects can do interior design and not the other way around.
Other way around.
So what happens is, if you're an architect, you can always practice interior design. As an interior design, you cannot practice architecture only for the sole reason is that you don't understand structures, you don't understand a lot of other things.
Services.
Other things that you don't understand. But when you look at the whole profession, it is very odd sometimes to say that architecture and interior design are different. Because when you visualize a space, you visualize it throughout, through the interior and through the architecture. So the best designers are those who combine both.
See, and architecture, let us not think it's only about design. See, for a building to stand or any project, there are a lot of things that go in. So there should be an awareness of the structure, of the services, the electrical, the plumbing, the air conditioning, the materials, and there's a large thing that is sustainability and green architecture. So we talk about how to make it sustainable and things like that. So it goes beyond just designing a space. There's much more to it.
Okay.
Yes, so one very important question I would like to ask, especially in India, before we buy a house or usually we or build a house, we usually see that house whether if it's Vastu compliant. Most of the customers ask that usually. So in that regard, is it required to have a good knowledge on Vastu to be a really good architect?
See, customer knowledge is very critical. See, it is what Vastu is a part of a customer expectation fulfillment.
Requirement.
Yeah.
So what happens is that today, in India, people go a lot by beliefs in Vastu. Like Asia is more towards belief. Like you go to China, it's Feng Shui. So people will look at Feng Shui. Now Feng Shui is very different from Vastu. They feel that works and we feel this works. So probably if it is a need of a market, then definitely we have to understand the nuances of it, because end of the day, if you don't know it, you are not in the race.
Yeah, exactly.
So now, what do you think the scope of architecture is in the next 15 years?
Phenomenal, because what we are seeing today is that India is rising as the world's fastest growing economy, and when there is any growth, whether you want to do production, whether you want to do IT, whether you want to live in a home, whether you want to work in an office, and to have more, whatever you want to do, everything needs architecture. So any profession that grows needs architecture to support it. So that way the scope for architecture is phenomenal.
What are the popular kinds of architectural designs in India, and what trends are gaining popularity these days?
See, there are a lot of schools of thought. Like one was classical architecture. Then we had something called brutalist architecture, where they said that a building is a machine and it should be efficient sans ornamentation. Later on, we moved into something which was like little more postmodern, where they said let us soften the machine and let the machine also look beautiful. Then you had something called minimalism, getting into a Zen space, and there was maximalism. So there are a lot of schools of architecture which comes in. But today what we are looking at in India is Indic architecture, where we club the best of modern architecture with our traditional values. So I think that's the language that we are now slowly treading in as a
We are all
direction.
trying to go back to the roots and get inspired from what we have.
That was quite informative.
So my next question is there any standardization procedures in architecture which has to be followed? And if yes, how does one achieve it?
See, when the moment the projects get larger, or when it becomes a project, when it's not a private residence, first and foremost, there are the bylaws which will guide you as to what can be built and what cannot be built. That's the first step. Be it a house, or an industry, an apartment, first is the bylaws. So the moment the projects become larger, there are other things which are involved, like the fire. To take care of, how do you take care of the fire safety?
Yeah, exactly.
Then how do you take care of light and ventilation? There are a lot of other factors which come into play the moment. So there are certain standards which you need to follow. the distance to the fire stair maybe, or the ratio of the window to the room size, things like that.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Those are very important safety issues, like
From point of
fire
safety.
extinguishers
Exactly.
at a point, and then
Exactly.
sprinklers.
And the kind of materials you use, even that matters.
Yeah, exactly. Fire resistant, more fire resistant
Yes.
materials.
So that's when the moment the projects get larger, or for that matter any project, we work with a consortium of consultants. So there's one consultant for fire, one for electrical, one for HVAC, and services and all
Yes.
that. So it's that kind of information which goes into it. An architect's job is where you tie the things up for a project to be to coordinate all this
Yeah.
and put it forth.
So many people are involved
Yes.
in standardization.
And this is even before you start the construction. So when you start the construction, there are other teams which are involved. The project management team, the construction team and all that. So
Yeah.
for everything there are certain standards which have to be put in as a norm. But then again there are other things as well, I mean.
Yeah.
One more question. So, how do you think the pandemic has affected the field of architecture? Like, what are the kind of coping strategies a person or an architect should have for like the work from home needs or something like that?
See, architecture, as we initially started by telling, is something which you do together. A couple of people get together and do. Of course, there are most of the fields where people work together, but in case of architecture, there's a lot of interaction. So, frankly speaking, it was a little difficult for us working from home because you are the people. There's so much you want to convey to the person working with
Right.
you. You want to sketch and put it across. The same thing was making a little longer process. It's not something you just type and send a letter and that person will understand. Here you're trying to put your thoughts across, the concept across to the person, so who's working with you, and to put
Yeah.
it, as a form of a drawing. So personally, it was a little difficult, but then of course we have the software, we have screens, we could do these, Google Meets and
Yeah.
convey it. But personally, I felt it took a little longer than it would have taken in the office. So that's why we didn't stay home for long. Only the time when there was curfew, we were at home. Otherwise, the next day we were back to work, and we liked it that way.
Regarding inflation, during we have the Russian-Ukrainian war going on. So inflation has occurred. So has it affected architecture or
Definitely, it's affected very badly because the cost of constructions have risen,
Yeah, exactly.
and whenever costs rise, the same bottle costs you 2 times more. You want to drink lesser water, so that's the problem.
And even timelines have changed. There are so many things which come from across the shore. So the timelines, like earlier we used to get that product maybe in a month. Now they say 3 months. And post-pandemic, they had to start the production. So that itself took a couple of months to gear up to start production. So there are times when we have ordered something and they said you'll get it only after 6 months.
Yeah.
So that is a huge repercussion.
Yeah.
And when the talks about the Ukraine was just happening, we had clients telling us कि we'll order the windows, and the house is not even started, but they wanted to order the windows and doors and keep it ready because you never know which way it hits. So that's how it is.
Yeah.
So how hard is it to achieve your targets within the deadline?
See, it's not a single individual who's involved with the project. Like I mentioned some time back, it's a lot of people involved in it. So that coordination has to go in hand. We have to plan. We have to have our schedules in place. Because when a certain part of construction is going to happen on site, we have to be prepared with all the drawings in place a couple of days before. So they get time to study the drawings and then start the construction. So yeah, it depends. Like our office, as far as we are concerned, we are used to handling projects which are a couple of lakh square feet. So the kind of team involved also is as large. So it's all about that. If it's a residence, maybe there are 2 people involved. But it's a large project, there are even 10 people in my own office working on a single project. That's how you gear up for it. Something like war maybe. I don't know. But you have to have a lot of people and prepare them. Have to have a schedule which holds good for any profession, even for your own exams, that holds good, isn't it? You have a schedule so you can work properly towards it.
Exactly.
While using graphic pads during the work from home method, was it easy for you to use them? Was you're used to sketching it out on your own, right? So was that hard for you?
No, in fact, that helped during the pandemic. It was easier to sketch on the screen instead of doing it on paper and then transferring and taking a picture. You could directly sketch on the drawings and send it as an image to your, staff or the team to work on.
Okay.
So that was definitely handy, the pen and the...
So do you have any general advice for the students who want to pursue architecture in their future?
See, the general advice that we would like to give is not only for people who want to pursue architecture, but for any profession. First and foremost, everything looks glamorous from the outside.
Yeah.
Inside a profession, it's all about lot of dedication, lot of hard work, and a lot of passion. You cannot have one of the three. You have to have all of the three in equal measure. It's only then you can, do your profession well. And like the old saying goes, success is sometimes dependent on the person staying on top. But the quality of work that you can do and the mark that you can leave on the world is something which is dependent on you all.
Yes, exactly.
So don't look at only success, just look at trying to be the best at what you can do. Don't look at what, you get inspired from the rest, and it's not necessary that you have to compete with the rest. The whole challenge in life is competing with yourself and trying to be a better person than the day before.
It is indeed a very fruitful interaction. We thank you both immensely for taking time off your busy schedules to interact with us and share your insightful opinions. On the occasion of World Architecture Day, my co-hosts and I extend our heartiest greetings to you both. We are honored to be amidst such accomplished individuals. We thank our management, principal, and our dear teachers for giving us an opportunity to take part in this event. As we draw close to an end of this episode in the Career Talk series, we thank our viewers for being a patient audience. We hope you enjoyed viewing this just as much as we did presenting.